Welcome back to Strange Resort, the podcast that lurks in the shadows of otherwise sunny vacation destinations. I am your host, George Hatfield, and I have at long last bid farewell to the Derry town house. I have set my sights and my GPS on a hopefully safer location. I am headed south into Androscoggin County. And if you listened to my last podcast, then perhaps you'll understand why I'm a bit frazzled today. Not only did I recently discover a closet filled with stacks and stacks of newspapers, apparently from an alternate timeline, I also found a folder that contained these coordinates, which I am following right now, as well as this photograph of my mother. And then, of course, there was that mysterious voice on the phone that said this to me.
I believe I am speaking with Mr. Hatfield.
Yes? And who may I ask is this?
I'm much more interested in talking about you,
Why?
because you shouldn't be here.
I've dealt with ghosts and phantoms before, but all of this feels outside of my comfort zone. Very unnerving because it feels so personal. Suffice to say, it feels good to be out on the road, leaving Derry in the dust, at least for now. As to what the future may hold, well, let's just keep on driving down this road, and we'll find out together. Oh, for those of you wondering, yes, I did return the Mike Hanlon notebooks. But first, of course, I took a lot of snapshots with my phone. And yes, they were a little bit late, but let's hope that the library police don't mind. I'm actually much more concerned about these strange men in fedoras. I can't fathom what they could want with me or my mother. Fortunately, I know that they can't get to my mom. She passed away over a decade ago. My father is still alive, but we are not on speaking terms. So if I want any answers, it's up to me to find them. The coordinates that were on that slip of paper have pinpointed a location in a place in between Lisbon, Maine and Lewiston. It looks like an empty lot next to a pond. It's not exactly a sunny vacation destination, but let's keep this strange resort party rolling. The trek lasts about 90 minutes, driving down I-95, and eventually turning onto Highway 9. With each mile on the odometer, the sinking feeling gets worse. My mother used to live in this area. She grew up in Lewiston, Maine. And when she was a teenager, she used to work the concession stand at the Lisbon Drive-In. So between the photo and these coordinates, I'm sure you can understand my apprehension. I don't talk about my parents on this podcast, but I suppose you deserve some context. My mom and dad met when she was just a year or two out of high school. She was starting her first year of correspondence school with lofty dreams of becoming a novelist. That all changed in September of 1958 when she met my dad, who was a law student, a few years older. They just happened to bump into each other in an office supply store, and they quickly fell in love. They got married, they moved to Vermont, and they started having kids. My older brother was a sickly child who passed away when he was 8. I never met my older sister. She died at the hospital. So by the time I came along, I was an unexpected surprise, and in some ways, I was my parents' last hope. But basically, I let my father down when I decided to study paranormal psychology instead of political science. And here we are. These are the coordinates. I don't see much here. That's Lisbon Street. There is the pond and the empty lot. I don't know what I was expecting to find on this little treasure hunt. Treasure. I check into the Travel Inn, which is located directly across the street. It's very convenient, very vacant. No reservation was required. The rooms are clean and the rate is fair. The shampoos and soaps have been stolen from different motels. And this will be a good place to make camp while I plan my next move. With just a few clicks of the keyboard, I connect with the ADS, the Androscoggin Detector Society. Within an hour, a pickup truck pulls up and 3 metal detector enthusiasts pile out. I give them each a $20 donation for their prompt assistance, and I also promise that if any treasure is to be discovered, I will split it with them.
What are you expecting us to find out here?
I don't know exactly. They scour the ground. About 30 minutes later, we get a beep, but it's just an old tin can. So what was the most valuable thing you found out here?
In terms of money, we found a wedding ring.
Oh.
That was for a friend, so we didn't keep it. But the strangest thing we ever found was up in Haven.
She doesn't get to finish her story because the detector goes off, and we've struck gold, figuratively speaking. And now we dig. It doesn't take long. We find a rusty metal box about 2 feet in length, the kind with a combination lock. I'm pretty sure we could wedge it open with a screwdriver, but I want to give this combination a try. It feels more honest that way. The Detector Society huddles up as I try my mother's birth date. Nothing. What if this is not about me or my family at all? What if it is about those newspapers that defy all history as we know it? A disturbing timeline that began on one pivotal day. I try the lock again with the numbers 11, 22, 63, and it opens. The detectorists are thrilled at first, but a little disappointed when they see what's inside. It's not gold. It's not $100 bills. It's just a bunch of notebooks, yellow pad notebooks with inky scribbles, and many of the pages are difficult to read due to water damage. But flipping through it, there is a lot in the middle that seems promising. I wonder how old these are.
You think it's somebody's manifesto? Or a time capsule?
I'm not sure. The first pages are badly damaged, but I can make out one phrase. Not a crying man. A couple pages in, I see who the author is by profession, if not by name. This has been written by a high school teacher near here. What year? I can't tell that yet, but he does mention Al's Diner, home of the Fatburger.
That place closed down about 15 years ago.
But there's something else. A postcard dated September 10th, 1958. It says, "Greetings from the land of ago, J.E." I keep this scrap of writing to myself. The detectorists don't seem terribly interested in the moldy manuscript. I hand over the lockbox as a keepsake, which thrills them. We exchange contact information, and I promise to let them know about the contents of these notebooks as soon as I've gone through them. The society is pretty sure that this is some embarrassing confession by a perverted high school teacher, but I believe that it is something quite different. And boy, oh boy, is this different. It's a few hours later. I am here in my room at the Travel Inn. It's a little claustrophobic in comparison to my suite back in Derry, but hey, there's no creepy voices in the drain. I've been sorting through these pages. About 40% of them are damaged. Maybe with some X-ray technology I could find out what they say. But right now, a lot of the words are lost. But not all of them. And here is my working theory about what this is. If this account is to be believed, this is the testament of a bona fide time traveler. Now, for legal reasons, I'm not going to mention the full name of the author with the initials J.E. But right now, for the sake of his privacy, I will be referring to him by his sobriquet, the name he gave himself when he went on I guess we would call it a secret mission into the past. He used the name George Amberson. I keep bumping into other Georges. Now keep in mind, this narrative is highly questionable and filled with plot holes due to water damage, but here is my attempt at piecing things together. In the late 1800s, the Warumbo Mill helped the town of Lisbon Falls thrive economically. Sure, the mills and weaving business was infamous for its brutal working conditions and rodents of unusual size, but the factory brought stable jobs to the community until, in competition with overseas textile companies, it closed down in 1964. 600 jobs were lost, and what remained in town was a cement corpse that would linger for decades. Sometime around the early 90s, an ex-Marine named Al Templeton dreamed of running a successful diner, the old-fashioned kind that his dad used to take him to when Al was a kid. Templeton made a go of it when he purchased his Illuminaire trailer. He set up Al's Diner, first in Auburn, Maine, but he soon realized there was too much competition, so he moved the Art Deco trailer to this courtyard, right next to the Warumbo ruins. Al Templeton advertised that his diner was home of the famous Fatburger, and local teens began spreading rumors that Al was using stray cats instead of beef. That was how they explained his incredibly low prices. About a month after Templeton moved the diner next to the old mill, he made a bizarre discovery. He was about to stock his pantry when, after just a few steps, he somehow, as if by magic or something you'd find in a science fiction novel, he suddenly appeared in an entirely new place, or at least new to him. He was actually in a much older place, outdoors, bright, sunny, smelly. He was next to the Warumbo Mill, but it was still fully operational. Al Templeton had stepped into the past. He was in Lisbon Falls, Maine, but it was September 9th, 1958, at 11:58 a.m. It's not specified in this manuscript, but I am guessing that the first transgression into the past resulted in Al having a panic attack. I'm guessing he probably turned around and pounded on the wall of the mill, hoping to return to the present. And then, lo and behold, his foot passed through the wall, taking him back into the 90s. But I'm sure you've guessed, Al made more than one trip through this time portal, and each time he did, it was always September 9th, precisely at 11:58 a.m. And whether he stayed in the past for an hour or a week, every time Al returned to his present, only 2 minutes had passed on his side of the so-called rabbit hole. And from there, it gets curiouser and curiouser. Al began to explore the Lisbon Falls of 1958. Enchanted by the sights and the sounds and the tastes of America's yesteryear, he would return to this spot on the space-time continuum any time he wanted to relax, or any time he wanted to make a little bit of money. Eventually, during these time travel field trips, he would come equipped with the power of hindsight, of the sports betting variety. That's right, he pulled a Biff from Back to the Future too. But unlike Biff, Templeton wasn't outrageously greedy. He just wanted to be able to run his diner, and so he used most of the funds to buy beef from 1958 butcher shops. He would then take the hamburger back through the portal and fry it up for his present-day customers. He did this all the way up until 2011, when the diner shut its doors for the last time. And here's the thing I don't understand about this. Al apparently visited the same butcher shop over and over again, buying the same hamburger from the same dead cow. How is that possible? Well, apparently each time he went back to 1958, the portal reset the past. So imagine you have a beautiful 80-year-old tree in your backyard. Now imagine you step into the mystical pantry of Al's diner and travel back in time to 1958. Next, you go and visit that tree when it's just a teenager and you chop it down. Then you go back through the rabbit hole to the present. Now in your backyard, the tree is no longer there. But then you go back to 1958, maybe this time only to buy a root beer, and when you return to your present, the tree is in your backyard, safe and sound. The past has been reset. Now, personally, it seems like a cosmological waste of a time portal, simply using it to make small sporting bets. And eventually, Al must have felt the same way. He began to imagine what might happen if he made a more monumental change to the past. What would happen if a person went back to 1958 and changed history? What if he stopped Lee Harvey Oswald and saved the life of President Kennedy? That's what Al wondered. He hoped that by doing so, the world would be a much better place, that the Vietnam War would be avoided, that over 58,000 American lives would be spared. That was exactly Templeton's intention when, in June of 2011, he decided to go on a mission into the past. His objective was to prove that Oswald acted alone and then eliminate him so that the Kennedy assassination never took place. Templeton conducted massive amounts of research on the life of Lee Harvey Oswald before embarking on his quest. He also dug into just about every conspiracy theory you could think of, because if Oswald was a patsy, then trying to stop him would be a waste of time. So Templeton decided to surveil Oswald, hoping to confirm that he was, in fact, the assassin and that there were no other conspirators involved. But of course, Oswald wasn't an easy man to reach, because on September 20th, 1959, he boarded a ship to Europe. On Halloween of that same year, he publicly declared his desire to defect to the Soviet Union. He worked in an electronics factory and soon became bored with the work. He wrote in his diary, "The work is drab. The money I get has nowhere to be spent. No nightclubs or bowling alleys, no places of recreation. I have had enough." While in Russia, he met and married Marina Prusakova. Their first child, a baby girl, was born February 15th, 1962. Eventually, Oswald became completely disenchanted with the Soviet Union. Can't imagine why. And soon after, he and his family arrived in the United States on June 13th, 1962. During those many months, Al Templeton was biding his time. But something else was happening as well. Something insidious. Cancer had spread through Al's lungs. The doctors of 1962 gave him a terminal diagnosis. He became so weak that he was not able to complete his mission. And so, according to this manuscript, Al Templeton returned defeated, physically emaciated. He knew that he didn't have much time left, and neither did his diner. He believed that once the trailer was moved, the time warp portal would pop like a bubble, And so he called one of his favorite customers, a local English teacher with the initials J.E., and this was the man Al hoped would carry the torch. Templeton gave his colleague money and a new identity, George Amberson. And if you recall the newspaper headlines that first caught my eye, then you already know where the narrative thread takes us. Going by his new name, this man in his early 40s took on Templeton's mission, dare I say, obsession. But he wasn't just obsessed with Oswald and Kennedy. Amberson had several other self-imposed missions. You see, one of his adult students at night school was an elderly janitor named Harry Dunning. As an assignment, Dunning wrote a personal narrative about a tragic event in his childhood. On Halloween night in 1958, Dunning's estranged father entered their home and murdered everyone in the family with a sledgehammer. Everyone, that is, except for Harry, who was wounded from the encounter. Apparently, George Amberson was so moved by this essay that when he learned of the rabbit hole, he decided that he would attempt to save the Dunning family, in part to test things out and to see if the past could actually be changed, but also he simply wanted to prevent a senseless act of violence. And here, I shouldn't have been surprised to find out that Amberson's first time travel mission took him to young Harry's hometown in Derry. By fall of 1958, most of the violence of the summer had subsided, and whatever malevolence that had taken the lives of children seemed to go back into hibernation. Except the Dunning murders serve as a final bloody encore. When Ambrose came to Derry, he stayed in, you guessed it, the Derry town house. And he began to spy on Frank Dunning, trying to decide the best way to prevent the upcoming homicides. According to the manuscript, Ambrose investigated the town and interviewed various people, including Beverly Marsh and Richie Tozier, two members of the Losers Club, the mysterious and I believe benevolent group who commissioned that beautiful statue where the standpipe once stood. Amberson befriended these two young people while they were practicing the Lindy Hop. He met them in a picnic area near Kansas Street, and according to this, he even gave them a quick swing dance lesson. During the conversation, the teens believed Amberson to be a trustworthy person. They provided the address of the Dunning family, and Beverly asked a rather cryptic question that's written here. "Do you know about the turtle?" It did not make any sense to Amberson. However, I recall Mike Hanlon's journal, and something that I thought at the time was just a doodle, but essentially, like Amberson, I am clueless to understand what it really means. Even though Amberson managed to stop Frank Dunning, whatever interference happened in the timeline was reset. And skipping to the end of the manuscript, as I often do, I find that Amberson and his partner Sadie Dunhill managed to save the president's life. But when he returned to 2011, he discovered that the deviation from the natural timeline proved disastrous. One thing the manuscript keeps saying is how the past is obdurate. It does not want to be changed. And if it isn't reset, then what starts off as a small ripple effect could turn into a volatile cosmic tidal wave. From what I can gather, this time traveler's journal is a tale of obsession and love. Amberson, like his mentor, became mesmerized with Oswald. But while he was biding his time, waiting for the right moment to stop the assassin, Amberson fell in love with a librarian from Jody, Texas. At some point, he must have told her the truth about his 21st century life, because she joined forces with him at the end, racing up the stairs of the Texas Book Depository in order to stop Lee Harvey Oswald. In that timeline, which apparently doesn't exist anymore, they managed to stop him, but the price was steep, and Sadie Dunhill lost her life, at least in that alternate timeline. Upon returning to the rabbit hole, Amberson met a man with a green card in his fedora. The man said his name was Zach Lang from Seattle, and I can't help but wonder if this was the man I talked to on the phone, the man who spoke of loose ends. Lang warned Amberson of the catastrophic consequences that would happen if the past wasn't reset. From what I can piece together from these mangled last pages, Amberson returned to Maine of 2011, but what he found there was a dystopian nightmare, an altered timeline riddled with earthquakes, rampaged by warfare, poisoned by radiation. Amberson's attempt at a good deed had somehow ruptured the space-time continuum, and so he went back into the portal back to 1958 to reset the timeline yet again, to stop the universe from ripping itself apart. But here's the thing. Amberson should have just stepped into the 1950s and then popped back to the present day to reset and heal the timeline. But instead of immediately returning to the present, and despite the pleas of Zach Lang, even despite the possibility of permanently damaging the space-time continuum, George Amberson ran away, venturing off yet again into the world of 1958. Perhaps he wanted to see his beloved Sadie alive once more. Instead, it seems he caught a ride just outside of town, and he hid out at this very motel where I am now standing. He spent about 3 weeks living in the past, knowing he did not belong there. Sometimes he would watch movies at the local drive-in, but mostly he would be in his motel room, writing in these notebooks, filling up these pages that would eventually be locked in a metal box and buried for decades. That's, of course, assuming we can believe any of this. Oh, hang on. Found something. It's a slip of paper. It just fell out from between the pages of the last notebook. Looks like this is a receipt for the yellow notepads that he purchased from Lewiston General. That name does not ring a bell, and yet something is sounding a mental alarm. My mom used to always talk about how she met my father and how it was a moment of serendipity. She was living in Lewiston, not far from here. She was working, hoping to get started on a new book idea, and she went to town to buy some yellow notepads. That was her favorite thing to write on. And the store manager said that he had sold out of them that morning, that someone had bought every single yellow pad off the shelf. So when she went to the town over to the office supply store, that's when she met my father. And that began the stream of events that led to their marriage and my eventual birth. But would any of that have happened without that so-called mysterious stranger buying every single yellow pad? The very notebooks I'm staring at now? After Amberson recorded his chronicles, he decided to return to 2011, and he must have hoped that he would find present day relatively normal. Kennedy was dead. The janitor's family was dead. These tragedies were not averted, but the history books showed a timeline that was healthy. He must have thought that nothing was out of joint, except that he didn't know that a young woman, whose maiden name was Judith McClay, had dreams of becoming an author, and that she set aside those dreams when she met a man who would marry her, love her for a while, cheat on her, break her heart 100 times over, and amid all that marital chaos, I would be born. The man on the phone said I wasn't supposed to be here, and I had asked him where was it I should be, and he told me nowhere. And I think he truly meant it. That might be why they've been watching me, because I'm not supposed to be here. If I'm adding everything up correctly, I am a loose thread in the fabric of the universe. Yeah, that sounds about right. There is a strange, terrible logic to all of this. Ever since I can remember, I have had a recurring dream that I am wandering through a world in which I don't belong. And I'm being chased by something behind me, something I can't quite see, but it feels like a giant eraser at the end of God's pencil. And no matter how fast I run, I can still feel those erasers pursuing me, chasing after me, until I'm finally wiped off the page.